Hyunwoo Park sat at the long metal table and tried not to show his anger. The room was cold and gray like everything else on this alien station. Across from him, 3 creatures stared at him with what he could only call hatred. The first alien looked like a giant crystal that had learned to walk. Its name was something impossible to say, so the humans just called it Crystal. Light moved through its body when it spoke, making strange patterns that hurt to look at. The second alien was worse. It looked like a person, but wrong in every way. Too tall, too thin, with skin that changed color every few seconds. This was the Zilani representative. The Zilani were a hive mind, which meant they all thought the same thoughts. Hyunwoo found that idea terrifying. The third alien was the easiest to understand, and that made it the most dangerous. It looked like a warrior from old Earth stories, with thick armor and scars across its face. The Krathen were proud fighters who respected strength above all else. This one kept looking at Hyunwoo like he was measuring him for a coffin. Behind, Hyunwoo sat his team. Daeun Kim watched every move the aliens made, her hand never far from her weapon. She was the best tactical officer in the human fleet, and she had kept them alive through 3 years of these useless meetings. Minho Lee sat quietly, typing notes on his tablet. He recorded everything that happened in these meetings. Every insult, every threat, every lie the aliens told. His reports went straight back to Earth, where angry politicians read them and made angry speeches. So Young Choi handled all their communications. She was young but smart, and she had a gift for languages. She could speak 7 different alien tongues, though she said most of them sounded like angry cats fighting. This was their 5th meeting this year. Each time the demands got worse. Crystal spoke first, its voice like breaking glass. The Galactic Council has made its decision. Humanity has become a threat to galactic peace. Hyunwoo said nothing. He had learned not to interrupt when the Ibo aliens were building up to their demands. The Zilani creature spoke next, its voice flat and emotionless. Human expansion must stop. Human colonies beyond the Sol system will be dissolved. Human populations will be relocated to Earth and Mars. Only, the Krathen warrior leaned forward. Human military forces will be disbanded. Human ships will be destroyed. This is not negotiable. Hyunwoo felt his jaw tighten. They wanted to lock humanity in a cage and throw away the key. Crystal continued. Furthermore, humanity will submit to Council guidance protocols. All human. Decisions regarding expansion, trade, and military matters must be approved by the Council. Human technology will be shared with the Council, the Zilani added. Advanced human weapons, faster-than-light drives, and artificial intelligence systems will be turned over immediately. The Krathen smiled, showing teeth like knives. Humanity will provide soldiers for Council military operations. 1 million human warriors per year to serve where the Council commands. Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. They wanted everything. They wanted to take away humanity's freedom, their colonies, their weapons, their future. And they wanted humans to fight their wars for them. Behind him, he heard Daeun's chair creak as she shifted. She was getting angry too. Good. They would need that anger. These terms are non-negotiable, Crystal said. Humanity has 72 hours to accept. And if we refuse? Hyunwoo asked quietly. The 3 aliens looked at each other. The Krathen answered. Then humanity will be declared an enemy of galactic peace. Council fleets will enforce compliance. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. So that was it. Submit or die. He had expected this for months, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the stomach. The Council controls 12 species, the Zilani said. Combined, we have 10,000 warships. Humanity has 300. The mathematics are simple. Resistance is futile, Crystal added, and Hyunwoo almost laughed at how much it sounded like an old Earth movie. The human species is young, the Krathen said almost gently. You do not understand how the galaxy works. There is order. There is peace. The strong lead, the weak follow. This is natural law. Natural law, Hyunwoo repeated. Yes, the Council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Before us, there were wars that destroyed entire star systems. We ended that chaos. We brought order. Hyunwoo looked at each alien in turn. And what about the species that didn't? Want your order? The aliens didn't answer, but their silence was answer enough. The Vortani used to have 12 colony worlds, Hyunwoo continued. Now they have one. The Kalari used to explore beyond the galactic rim. Now they mine asteroids for council ships. The Bren used to make beautiful art. Now they make weapons in council factories. They are content, the Zilani said. They are slaves, Hyunwoo replied. The Krathan slammed his fist on the table. They are protected. They are fed. They are given purpose. Whose purpose? Hyunwoo asked. The room fell silent. Outside the windows, Hyunwoo could see the council's main station. It was huge, bigger than most moons. Thousands of ships came and went every day, carrying orders to 100 worlds, all of them built on the backs of species that had once been free. Crystal spoke again, its light patterns angry now. Humanity thinks it is special. You are not. You are simply the latest species to learn that freedom is less important than survival. Every species fights at first, the Zilani added. Every species thinks they can resist. Every species learns they cannot. The galaxy is vast, the Krathan said. There are threats you cannot imagine. The Council protects everyone from these threats. That protection requires sacrifice. Hyunwoo stood up slowly. Dao Yun tensed behind him, ready to fight if needed. Minho stopped typing and looked up. So Young's hand moved to her communicator. I need to discuss these terms with my government, Hyunwoo said. There is nothing to discuss, Crystal replied. Accept or face the consequences. Hyunwoo gathered his papers and put them in his briefcase. The aliens watched him with growing confusion. This wasn't how these meetings usually ended. Ambassador Park, the Zilani said, you must understand. Compliance is inevitable. The mathematics, I understand perfectly, Hyunwoo interrupted. He walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. The three aliens stared at him, waiting for his answer. Behind them, the vast council station continued its work, processing the lives of 1 trillion beings like items in a warehouse. The United Earth Federation, Hyunwoo said clearly, formally withdraws from all negotiations with the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence that followed was complete. Not even the station's background hum seemed to penetrate the room. Crystal's light patterns went wild. You cannot, we can, Hyunwoo said. And we do. He turned and walked out. His team followed him without a word. Behind them, the aliens began shouting in their own languages, but none of the humans looked back. In the corridor, So Young activated her secure communicator. This is Diplomatic Vessel Soul's Pride to Earth Command. Priority Alpha message. She paused, looking at Hyunwoo. He nodded. Diplomacy is dead, she said into the communicator. Prepare for war. As they walked toward their ship, Da-un spoke quietly. Sir, they have 10,000 ships. I know, Hyunwoo replied. We have 300. I know that too. Then why? Hyunwoo stopped walking and looked at her. Because some things are worth dying for, Da-un, and freedom is one of them. They reached their ship and prepared to leave. Behind them, the council station buzzed with activity as the news spread. Humanity had said no. For the first time in 1,000 years, someone had said no to the Galactic Council. The war was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Park walked out of that gray room. 6 months since humanity told the most powerful force in the galaxy to go to hell. Now, the galaxy waited to see what would happen next. On the Council's main station, Crystal paced back and forth in its private chamber. Its light pattern showed deep worry. For 6 months it had sent message after message to the human government. Every single one went unanswered. The Zilani representative sat perfectly still in its own room. Its species shared thoughts across space, so it knew what every other Zilani in the galaxy was thinking. Right now, they were all thinking the same thing. This silence was not normal. In the war room of the council station, The Krathan general studied star charts. Red marks showed human colonies. Blue marks showed council fleets. There were far more blue marks than red ones. But something bothered him. The humans had stopped all communication, but their ships were still moving. Where were they going? Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity was very busy. Fleet Admiral Jae-sung Nam stood on the bridge of the battleship Iron Soul and watched construction ships work around the clock. Luna's shipyards, which used to build one ship per month, now launched one ship per week. Mars had tripled its production facilities. The asteroid belt hummed with mining operations that never stopped. "Status report," he said to his aide. 200 new ships completed, sir. Another 300 under construction. The civilian populations have exceeded all recruitment targets. Jae-sung nodded. When word came back about the Council's ultimatum, something amazing happened. Humans who had never agreed on anything suddenly agreed on one thing. They would not kneel. Factory workers volunteered for extra shifts. Students dropped out of school to join the military. Retired veterans came back to service. Old mining ships were converted into warships. Cargo haulers became troop transports. Even passenger liners were fitted with weapons. In her laboratory deep under the surface of Earth, Yoon Ji-song worked on humanity's greatest secret. She led the Terran Intelligence Division, and her job was to know everything about humanity's enemies. "Show me the Vorthak files again," she said to her assistant. The holographic display lit up with information about the crystal aliens. Their technology was based on light and energy manipulation. They were incredibly advanced, but they had one weakness. They thought in predictable patterns. "What about the Zelani?" she asked. More information appeared. The hive mind species shared thoughts instantly across any distance. This made them excellent at coordination but terrible at innovation. They had not developed a single new technology in 300 years. And the Krathan? The warrior race appeared on screen. They were strong, proud, and skilled fighters. But they followed rigid honor codes that made their tactics predictable. They would never retreat, never surrender, and never fight dirty. Yoonji smiled. The Council's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had been powerful for so long that they had forgotten how to adapt. In another part of Earth, Won Seok-yoon worked with a team of military strategists on something called Protocol Defiance. They were planning for a war against an enemy that outnumbered them 30-1. "We cannot win a direct fight," he told his team. "So we will not fight directly." On the wall behind him was a quote from an ancient Earth general. "The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue. Hit and run," one of his officers said. "Exactly. We are too small to stand and fight, but we are also too small to easily catch. We will be like mosquitoes fighting elephants." "Mosquitoes can kill elephants," another officer pointed out. "If there are enough of them and they carry the right disease." Won-seok nodded. "And we have the perfect disease, the idea that no one has to bow to anyone else." While Earth prepared for war, human colonies throughout the BTU galaxy received new orders. Some orders came through official channels. Others came through secret messages that looked like normal trade communications. On Proxima Colony, Tae-hyun-oh read his orders and immediately began evacuating civilians. The colony had 50,000 people, and they all needed to be moved to hidden bases in the asteroid belt. "Sir," his aide said, "the people are asking why we're leaving. They built homes here. Lives." "Tell them they're not losing their homes," Tae-hyun replied. "They're making them into weapons." Similar evacuations happened on dozens of worlds. The Council's spy network reported that humans seemed to be abandoning their colonies. This confused the aliens even more. On the water world of Kepler 442b, Kyungmin Seo received very different orders. Her colony was built on floating platforms that could move anywhere on the planet's vast oceans. She was told to prepare those platforms for a very special purpose. "Ma'am," her chief engineer said, "are you sure about this? If we follow these orders, we'll destroy everything we've built here." "Sometimes," Kyungmin replied, "you have to break something to save it." Back in the Sol system, Haewon Jung worked in a secret laboratory that officially did not exist. She and her team studied captured council technology, looking for ways to turn the aliens' own weapons against them. The Krathen power armor is impressive, she told her team, but it has a fatal flaw. It's designed to fight other Krathen. The joints can't handle attacks from below. What about Zilani ships? Asked one of her researchers. They're perfectly coordinated, but they all think the same way. If we can fool one, we can fool them all. And the Vorthak technology? Complex, but brittle. It depends on precise energy frequencies. Change those frequencies and their entire system crashes. While scientists worked on alien weaknesses, intelligence agents worked on something else entirely. Throughout Council space, humans who lived on alien worlds began receiving coded messages. The messages were simple. Remember what freedom feels like. These humans were teachers, traders, technicians, and tourists. They had been living under Council rule for years, watching as local species served their alien masters without question. Now they had a choice to make. Some chose to come home to human space, but others chose to stay and spread a very dangerous idea. On the industrial world of Vorthak 7, human engineer Yujin Han worked in a factory that built Council warships. She was supposed to install navigation systems. Instead, she installed something else entirely. On the agricultural world of Zilani 12, human biologist Min Seok Kang was supposed to improve crop yields for the hive mind species. Instead, he improved something else, the independent thinking of the local worker species. On the military training world of Krathen 3, human weapons instructor Subin Park was supposed to teach alien recruits how to fight. Instead, she taught them why they were fighting. The Council's intelligence services noticed increased human activity, but they didn't understand what it meant. They saw humans leaving some worlds and staying on others. They saw increased military production in human space. They saw ships moving in strange patterns, but they didn't see the most important thing of all. 3 months after the failed negotiations, Crystal called an emergency council meeting. The humans are planning something, it announced to the assembled alien leaders. Our sources report massive military buildup. The Zilani representative nodded. All human colonies have increased their defensive capabilities. Many have been partially evacuated. The Krathen general slammed his fist on the table. Then we should attack now before they are ready. Attack what? Crystal asked. Half their colonies appear empty. The other half are heavily defended. And we still have no idea what their real strategy is. Perhaps, suggested an alien from a smaller species, we should try negotiating again? The 3 major council races turned to stare at the speaker. It was a Kalari, one of the species that had been absorbed into the council centuries ago. The Kalari rarely spoke in council meetings. The humans walked out. The Zilani reminded everyone. They refused to negotiate. Have we tried asking why? The Kalari continued. The question hung in the air. Finally, Crystal answered. It does not matter why. They will submit to council authority, or they will be destroyed. But privately, Crystal wondered the same thing. Why had the humans chosen certain death over peaceful submission? Every other species had eventually seen reason. The council debated what to do about the silent humans. Those same humans continued their preparations. In shipyards throughout human space, the last components were being installed on new warships designed specifically to fight Council forces. Admiral Jae-sung Nam inspected the first of the new class, the destroyer Incheon's Fury. It was smaller than a Council battleship, but faster and more maneuverable. Its weapons were designed to punch through energy shields. Its armor was designed to deflect energy beams. How many more like this? He asked his chief designer. 50 completed, Admiral. 200 more under construction. And the special project? The designer smiled grimly. Ahead of schedule, sir. The first batch will be ready within the month. The special project was humanity's biggest secret. Hidden in the asteroid belt, protected by every defensive system humans could build, was something the Council could never imagine. Something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy, but that secret would have to wait. because the Council had finally decided to act. The Council fleet arrived at Proxima Centauri expecting to find frightened humans begging for mercy. Instead, they found hell. Captain Crystal of the Seventh Light commanded the Council flagship, a massive vessel that had never lost a battle. As his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, he expected to see human ships surrendering immediately. The mathematics were simple. His fleet had 50 ships, the humans had maybe 10, but there were no human ships in sight. "Scan for human vessels," Crystal ordered. "No ships detected, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "The system appears empty." Crystal felt uneasy. Where were the humans? His intelligence report said this system had over 1 million human colonists. They couldn't have all evacuated. "Move toward the main colony world," he ordered. As the Council fleet moved deeper into the system, Tae-Hyun-Oh watched from a hidden asteroid base. He was no longer a mining engineer. 6 months of intensive training had turned him into something else, a guerrilla fighter who understood that victory sometimes required sacrifice. "All units, this is Ghost Base," he said into his communicator. "The fish are in the net, execute Plan Alpha." What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Council fleet sensors started malfunctioning. What they thought were asteroids suddenly lit up with engine signatures. What they thought were debris fields turned out to be camouflaged weapons platforms. The Proxima system had been turned into the largest minefield in human history. "Contact," the Krathan tactical officer shouted. "Multiple human vessels bearing—" He never finished the sentence. A converted human cargo hauler, packed with nuclear warheads and piloted by Subin Kang, had just rammed itself into the bridge of his cruiser. Subin had volunteered for this mission. She knew it was a one-way trip. As her ship tore through the alien vessel's hull, she shouted into her radio, "Remember Terra! Remember freedom!" Her sacrifice was the signal for chaos to begin. Hidden weapon platforms throughout the system opened fire. Converted mining ships, their cargo holds full of kinetic weapons, appeared from behind asteroids. Human fighters, too small for the Council's sensors to track effectively, swarmed like angry bees. Captain Crystal of the Seventh Light had fought in dozens of battles. He had never experienced anything like this. His enemies weren't fighting like civilized beings. They were fighting like wild animals, willing to die if it meant taking Council ships with them. "Return fire," he ordered. "Target the human command ship." "There is no command ship, sir," his tactical officer replied. "They're operating independently." That was impossible. How could they coordinate without a command structure? But as Crystal watched, he realized the humans weren't coordinating. They were each acting on their own, which made them impossible to predict. A human destroyer, damaged and venting atmosphere, turned straight toward Crystal's flagship. He ordered evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The destroyer, commanded by Dong Hyun Lim, had saved its last missile salvo for this moment. "For humanity!" Lim shouted as his ship exploded against the flagship's shields. The flagship survived, but barely. Crystal's perfect battle formation was in chaos. Ships were scattered, crews were panicking, and the humans kept coming. But the most shocking moment came when Young-Soo Park, commanding the stealth frigate Ghost of Seoul, opened a communication channel to the entire Council fleet. "Council forces," his voice crackled across all frequencies. "This is Captain Park of the Human Liberation Fleet. We are not your enemy. Your masters are." The alien crews listened in confusion as the young human continued. "We know you have enslaved races serving on your ships. Vortani engineers, Kalari navigators, Bren gunners. You force them to fight their own kind's liberation. But we offer you a choice." On Council ships throughout the fleet, enslaved aliens looked at each other in shock. No one had ever acknowledged their existence before. "Surrender your weapons," Young-Soo continued, "and we will free you. Help us fight your oppressors and we will help you find new homes. Continue to serve those who enslaved you, and we will treat you as enemies." Crystal cut the communication channel, but it was too late. The message had been heard. On 17 Council ships, enslaved species began to revolt. The battle for Proxima Centauri lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Council fleet was destroyed or scattered. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The human defenders had lost 80% of their ships and most of their people. As rescue ships searched for survivors, Tae-hyun-oh floated in an escape pod, badly injured but alive. Through his pod's window, he could see the wreckage of both fleets scattered among the asteroids. Was it worth it? His rescue asked over the radio. Tae-hyun looked at the hulks of destroyed council ships and at the liberated aliens being evacuated to safety. "Ask me in 100 years," he said. News of the Proxima battle spread through the galaxy faster than light. The Council had lost an entire fleet to a bunch of human miners and merchants. It should have been impossible. On the Council's main station, the three primary races held an emergency meeting. "How?" Crystal's replacement demanded. "How did they destroy 50 of our best ships?" The Krathan general paced angrily. They fought without honor. They used suicide attacks. They ignored all civilized rules of warfare. "Rules," the Zilani representative said thoughtfully, "are apparently less important than they believed." For the first time in 1,000 years, the Council faced an enemy that didn't play by their rules, an enemy that preferred death to surrender, an enemy that actually meant it when they said they would fight for freedom. But Proxima was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, the Yai pattern repeated across human space. Council fleets would arrive at human colonies expecting easy victories. Instead, they found nightmares. On Kepler 442b, Kyungmin Seo had converted her floating city platforms into massive kinetic weapons. When the Council fleet entered the system, she dropped entire cities on them from orbit. The water world's gravity did the rest. "You wanted our submission," she broadcast as her platforms burned up in the atmosphere. "So here it is, falling at 30,000 meters per second." On Wolf 359, human defenders had turned an entire asteroid belt into a maze of hidden weapons and false signals. Council ships that entered the field simply disappeared, picked off one by enemies they never saw coming. But the most shocking development came when liberated alien slaves began joining human forces. The Vortani were brilliant engineers who knew exactly how Council technology worked. The Kalari were master navigators who knew every hidden route in Council space. The Bren were artists who understood that sometimes destruction could be beautiful. Bo-Ram Kim, a human psychologist who had volunteered for military service, was assigned to work with these liberated aliens. Her job was to help them overcome centuries of mental conditioning. "They told you that freedom was chaos," she explained to a group of former slaves. "They told you that order required submission. But look around you. We're free, and we're more organized than they are." "But you're losing ships," one of the aliens pointed out. "You're losing people. How is this better?" Bo-Ram smiled sadly. "Because we're choosing to lose them. Choice, even the choice to die, is what makes us free." The freed aliens began to understand. They had never been given choices before. Even the choice to die had been taken away from them. Now, for the first time in centuries, they could decide their own fates, and many of them decided to fight. The war spread beyond human space. On Council worlds where humans had lived and worked, those humans began sabotaging production facilities. Weapons factories exploded. Shipyards suffered mysterious accidents. Communication networks failed at crucial moments. Yu Jin Han, the human engineer who had been installing faulty navigation systems, was finally caught by Council security. As they dragged her away, she shouted to the alien workers watching, "You don't have to build their war machines. You have hands, use them." The idea spread like wildfire. If forced laborers simply refused to work, what could the Council do? Kill them all? Then who would build their ships? Strikes began on industrial worlds throughout Council space. Not organized. Strikes with leaders and demands, but spontaneous refusals by individuals who had finally learned to say no. The Council's response was predictably harsh. They sent military forces to break the strikes, arrest the leaders, and restore order. But they discovered something troubling. There were no leaders to arrest. The strikes weren't organized. They were just thousands of individuals making the same choice at the same time. And you can't negotiate with an idea. Min Seok Kang, the human biologist who had been working on agricultural worlds, took a different approach. Instead of sabotage, he taught. He showed local species how their ancestors had lived before the council arrived. He shared stories of civilizations that had chosen freedom over security. Your people used to explore the stars, he told a group of young aliens on Zelani 12. They built beautiful cities. They wrote poetry. They made choices. What happened to all of that? The young aliens had never heard these stories. The council's history book said their ancestors had been primitive and violent before the council brought peace and order. Are you saying the council lied to us? One young alien asked. 2 years into the war, the galaxy had changed in ways no one had expected. What started as a simple punishment of rebellious humans had become something much bigger and much more dangerous. Shunghwan Moon stood on the bridge of the ship Coalition's Hammer and looked at the strange fleet around him. Half the ships were human, built in the hidden shipyards of the outer system. The other half were alien vessels, crewed by species that had broken free from council control. Status report, he ordered. 57 ships ready for battle, sir, his tactical officer replied. 31 human, 26 liberated alien vessels. And crew morale? High, sir. Very high. Moon nodded. Fighting for freedom did that to people. It made them willing to face impossible odds with a smile. His ship was a perfect example of how the war had changed everything. The Coalition's Hammer had started as a council heavy cruiser, but when its Vortani crew learned about human ideas of freedom, they had mutinied, killed their council overseers, and fled to human space. Now it flew under a new flag, the banner of the Free Species Coalition. The coalition had grown from a desperate human alliance into something bigger. Dozens of species that had lived under council rule for centuries were remembering what it felt like to make their own choices. But the war had taken a dark turn. The council, faced with rebellions throughout their space, had made a terrible decision. If they couldn't rule through fear, they would rule through terror. The order had come from the council's highest authority, the triumvirate of the 3 major races. If any world rebelled, it would be made an example of. Not just conquered, but destroyed. Moon had seen the recordings from the Keth system. The Keth were a peaceful species that had dared to declare independence from the council. In response, the council fleet had turned their homeworld into a ball of radioactive glass. Remember, Keth had become the rallying cry of the rebellion. Earth. President In-suk Che read the latest intelligence reports with growing alarm. The council wasn't just fighting humans anymore. They were fighting the very idea that anyone could live free. How many worlds have they destroyed? She asked her aide. 7 confirmed, Madam President. 3 more have surrendered rather than face the same fate. In-suk closed her eyes. 7 worlds. Billions of beings. Gone. All because humanity had dared to say no to the council's demands. Any word from the Deep Project? She asked. Her aide smiled grimly. Gitai Ryu reports they're ahead of schedule. The first ships are ready. In-suk nodded. The Deep Project was humanity's most desperate gamble. For 2 years, hidden in the void between galaxies, human engineers had been building something that had never been tried before. They were building ships powered by artificial black holes. Gitai Ryu floated in zero gravity inside the construction bay of Deep Station Alpha. Around him, the largest human spaceship ever built was nearing completion. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and powered by technologies that barely existed 2 years ago. How many more? He asked his chief engineer. This is the 1,000th ship, sir. We have enough materials for another 2,000, but we're running out of time. Gitai nodded. Intelligence reports suggested the council was preparing for something big. Something that would end the war once and for all. They were planning to destroy Earth itself. The plan made sense from the council's point of view. Humanity was like a disease spreading ideas of freedom and rebellion throughout the galaxy. The only way to stop a disease was to kill it at its source. But the council had made one crucial mistake. They assumed Earth was humanity's only source of strength. Narration commanded the dreadnought Terra's Vengeance, the first ship of the new Deep Fleet. She had volunteered for this mission knowing it might be a one-way trip. The artificial black hole that powered her ship was stable, but the technology was still experimental. "All stations report ready, Captain," her executive officer announced. "Then let's show the Council what humans can really do," Narai replied. The Deep Fleet began its journey home. 1,000 ships invisible to sensors moving through the empty space between galaxies. They would arrive at the Council's home system just as the Council fleet reached Earth, but Earth had other surprises waiting. Admiral Jae-sung Nam stood in the command center buried deep under the Pacific Ocean and watched the Council's greatest fleet approach his home system. 3,000 ships representing every species under Council control. It was the largest military force in galactic history. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the Council fleet." "Put it through." Crystal of the 8th Light, Essie, voice filled the command center. This Crystal was the brother of the one who had died at Proxima, and he wanted revenge. "Humans of Earth." The alien's translated voice was cold with hatred. "Your rebellion ends now. You have caused the deaths of billions. You have brought chaos to a peaceful galaxy. You have proven that your species is too dangerous to exist." The message continued for several minutes, listing humanity's crimes against galactic peace and order. "We offer you one final chance," Crystal concluded. "Surrender unconditionally, and we will allow your species to continue as slaves. Refuse, and we will turn your world into dust." Admiral Nam opened a response channel. "Crystal of the 8th Light," he said calmly. "This is Admiral Nam of the Terran Defense Force. We have considered your offer." He paused, looking around the command center at the faces of his staff. Young and old, men and women, all united by the simple belief that freedom was worth any price. "Our answer," he continued, "is the same as it has always been. Go to hell." The attack began immediately. 3,000 Council ships against Earth's orbital defenses. It should have been over in hours. But Earth had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. The planet's surface was covered with hidden weapon emplacements. The moon had been turned into a fortress. The asteroid belt was a maze of automated defense platforms. And in Earth's deepest bunkers, scientists had been working on humanity's darkest secret. "Activate the reality engine," Admiral Nam ordered. The reality engine was based on captured Council technology, improved with human engineering and powered by the same artificial black holes that drove the Deep Fleet. It was designed to do one thing: make the impossible possible. Council ships that should have been invulnerable suddenly found their shields failing. Weapons that should have been unstoppable were deflected by simple aluminum hull plating. Navigation systems that had worked for centuries suddenly couldn't tell up from down. "What is happening?" Crystal demanded of his science officer. "Unknown, sir. It's as if the laws of physics are being rewritten." That was exactly what was happening. The reality engine was changing the fundamental constants of space-time in the Sol system, not permanently, and not completely, but enough to give human technology an impossible advantage. The Council fleet, designed to operate under one set of physical laws, found itself fighting under another set entirely. But the real shock came when Yeonsu Kim's voice suddenly filled every Council ship. "Council forces," the human diplomat said. "This is Commander Kim of the Human Intelligence Division. You thought I was dead. You were wrong." For 3 years, Yeonsu had been building a network of human agents throughout Council space. They had infiltrated military bases, government facilities, and communication centers. Now, as the Council's main fleet attacked Earth, that network activated. On Council worlds throughout the galaxy, critical systems began failing. Power grids went down. Communication networks collapsed. Weapons factories exploded. It was coordinated sabotage on a scale never before attempted. "We have been preparing for this day since the war began," Yeonsu continued her broadcast. "Every threat you made, every world you destroyed, every species you enslaved, we have been watching, we have been learning, and we have been planning." On the bridge of his flagship, Crystal watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across Council space. Rebellions were erupting on 50 worlds. Critical infrastructure was failing throughout the galaxy. His perfect order was collapsing. How? He whispered. The answer came from an unexpected source. On the council ship Eternal Order, the enslaved, Bren crew had been listening to human broadcasts for months. They had learned about concepts like choice, dignity, and self-determination. Now they made a choice of their own. For freedom, the Bren captain said as he turned the ship's weapons on its sister vessels. The mutiny spread like wildfire. On ship after ship, enslaved crews turned against their council overseers. The invasion fleet began destroying itself, from within. But the council had one final card to play. If they couldn't rule the galaxy, they would destroy it. Activate the Nova Protocol, Crystal ordered. The Nova Protocol was the council's ultimate weapon. By destabilizing Sol's nuclear fusion process, they could turn Earth's own sun into a weapon that would destroy the entire solar system. As sensors detected the weapon preparing to fire, Admiral Nam made the hardest decision of his life. All civilian vessels, he broadcast, begin immediate evacuation. All military vessels prepare for final defensive action. Earth's children would survive, even if Earth itself did not. But then space itself seemed to tear open, and something impossible emerged. The Deep Fleet had arrived. The war ended not with a bang, but with a choice. Crystal of the Eighth Light floated in the wreckage of his command ship, waiting to die. Around him, the remnants of the greatest fleet in galactic history drifted like broken toys. His 1,000-year-old empire had crumbled in a matter of hours. He expected the humans to finish him off. That's what the council would have done. Instead, he received an unexpected message. Crystal of the Eighth Light, came a calm human voice. This is Rescue Ship Soul's Hope. We're here to help. I am your enemy, Crystal replied, confused. You were, the human answered. But the war is over. Now you're just someone who needs medical attention. As human rescue teams pulled him from his destroyed ship, Crystal tried to understand what had happened. His people had ruled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. When someone challenged that rule, the council destroyed them. It was simple, effective, and had worked for 1,000 years. But humans were different. They didn't want to rule. They wanted something far more dangerous. They wanted everyone to be free. 3 months later, Crystal stood in what used to be the council's great assembly hall. The massive chamber had once held representatives from 100 subjugated worlds, all of them following orders from the Triumvirate. Now it held something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary gathering of free species, Suhyun-O. The new Secretary General of the Galactic Confederation of Free Worlds stood at the podium where the Triumvirate once issued their absolute commands. We gather today, she said to the assembled delegates, not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. The chamber buzzed with translation devices rendering her words into dozens of languages. Many of the aliens present had never heard such an idea before. The old council promised you peace through submission, Suhyun continued. We offer you something different, the chance to choose your own destiny. In the Vorthax section, young crystals who had grown up during the war began to glow with excitement. They had learned about concepts like self-determination and individual choice. Their elders, raised under the old system, remained dim and uncertain. The Zilani delegation was split in a way that should have been impossible for a hive mind. Some had learned to think independently during the war. Others remained connected to the collective consciousness that had served the council for centuries. The Krathan warriors sat with their weapons at their sides, unsure whether this gathering was a peace negotiation or a new kind of battle. I know, many of you are confused, Suhyun said, her voice gentle but firm. You've been told that freedom leads to chaos, that choice leads to conflict, that someone must always rule for there to be order. She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that represented dozens of species. We're here to prove that wrong. Behind Suhyun sat the human delegation, but they were outnumbered by representatives of the species they had supposedly conquered. The Bren, whose artistic culture had been suppressed for centuries, had already begun decorating their section with beautiful murals. The Kalari navigators were sharing star charts with anyone interested in exploration. The Vortani engineers We're offering to help other species repair war damage. The Confederation has only 3 rules, Soo-hyun announced. First, every species gets 1 vote regardless of size or power. Second, no one can be forced to join, and anyone can leave at any time. Third, no species may enslave, oppress, or dominate another. The chamber erupted in debate. The concept was so alien to most of the delegates that they couldn't process it. A Krathan general stood up. But who will maintain order? Who will settle disputes between worlds? Who will protect the weak from the strong? We will, Soo-hyun replied. All of us together. Impossible, declared a Zelani speaker. Collective decisions require collective thought. Independent minds cannot achieve true coordination. From the audience, a voice called out, "Want to bet?" The speaker was Myung-hoon Bae, the general who had led the final assault on the council's capital. He was missing an arm and walked with a limp, but his eyes were bright with amusement. The humans coordinated fine during the war, he continued. So did all the species that joined us. We didn't need a hive mind. We just needed a common goal. And what goal will unite us now that the war is over? Asked a Vorthak elder. The answer came from an unexpected source, a young Bren artist who had helped design the Confederation's new flag, building something better than what we had before. The debates continued for weeks. Some species withdrew from the negotiations, preferring the certainty of the old ways. Others stayed and argued about every detail of the new government. But slowly something unprecedented began to emerge, a galactic government based on consent rather than conquest. Crystal watched the proceedings with growing amazement. He had been offered a place in the new government, representing those Vorthak who chose to join the Confederation. The irony was not lost on him. He was being given more voice in galactic affairs as a former enemy than he had ever had as a council leader. Why? He asked Ji-hyun Kang, the human ambassador assigned to help him understand the new system. Why what? Ji-hyun replied. Why give your enemies power? Why risk chaos for the sake of freedom? Why not simply rule as we did? Ji-hyun smiled. Because ruling through fear means you're always afraid. Someone will always be stronger than you. Eventually. But if you base your government on choice, on cooperation, on mutual benefit, then everyone has a reason to keep it working. 5 years later, Crystal stood on the observation deck of the exploration vessel New Horizon. The ship was a joint project of 12 species, designed to explore the galaxy beyond the old council borders. Chang-Woo Yang, the ship's human captain, joined him at the viewport. Outside, a nebula painted space in brilliant colors that no council ship had ever bothered to investigate. Are you satisfied with how things turned out? Chang-Woo asked. Crystal considered the question. The galaxy was certainly more chaotic than it had been under council rule. There were disputes between member worlds. Some species had left the Confederation and formed their own alliances. A few had even tried to create their own mini-empires. But there was also more creativity, more exploration, more art and music and literature than the galaxy had seen in centuries. Species that had been forced to serve were rediscovering their own cultures. New technologies were being developed through cooperation rather than conquest. And for the first time in his very long life, Crystal was doing something because he wanted to, not because he was ordered to. Yes, he said finally. I am satisfied. In the New Horizons laboratory, Hee-jin Moon worked on her great project, a comprehensive history of the Human Council War. She had interviewed thousands of participants from both sides, trying to understand how such a small conflict had grown into a galactic revolution. The Council's mistake, she wrote in her notes, wasn't underestimating human military power. They had better ships, more resources, and centuries of experience. Their mistake was underestimating the power of an idea. The idea was simple, that every thinking being deserved the right to choose their own path. That strength came from cooperation, not domination. That diversity was more valuable than uniformity. It was an idea that humans hadn't invented, but they had been willing to die for it, and that willingness had inspired others to live for it. On Earth, now rebuilt and more beautiful than ever, Junho Park worked at the Confederation Embassy. He was the son of the ambassador who had walked out of those failed negotiations 6 years ago. His father had died in the war, but had lived to see the victory. Today, Junho was processing an application for Confederation membership from a species at the galaxy's edge. They were called the Wanderers, and they had heard about the human concept of freedom from refugee ships fleeing Council space. "We wish to learn more about this Confederation," their message said. "We have always chosen to roam the stars freely, but we did not know that choice itself could be a form of government." Junho smiled as he approved their application. His father would have been proud. The Galactic Council had pushed too hard, demanded too much, and offered too little. They had tried to force humanity to kneel and instead had taught them to stand taller. Now the galaxy was full of species learning to stand on their own. In the end, the humans had kept their promise. They hadn't fought the war to rule the galaxy. They had fought it so that no one could rule everyone else. And in a universe full of thinking beings who valued their freedom, that was victory enough. The old galaxy was dead. The new one was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, on worlds that had never heard of the Council or the Confederation, other species looked up at the stars and dreamed of the day when they too might be free to choose their own destiny. The humans had shown them that it was possible. Now it was up to everyone else to make it happen.